Welcome to Fresh Tortilla Thursday, Episode 4 The Shirt. People always say to watch out for the person you're dating. No one ever tells you to watch the friend you've known since childhood. Some betrayals don't begin with a kiss, they begin with a button. Lucy and I had known each other since grade school. We grew up in the same neighborhoods, attended the same schools, and eventually graduated from the same high school. We weren't inseparable, but we had history. We shared something deeper than friendship. We understood each other's childhoods. We were both raised by single mothers. We knew what it meant to watch our mothers work tirelessly just to keep the lights on. We admired their strength, their sacrifices, and the resilience they carried every single day. That shared experience created a bond that lasted for years. But despite everything we had in common, there was one area where we couldn't have been more different. I wasn't much of a dater. I wasn't bored crazy. Relationships were something that I did not chase. I was reserved, cautious, and perfectly content focusing on my own life. Lucy, on the other hand, loved the attention. She was rarely in committed relationships, but she always seemed to have someone taking her out, buying her gifts, or making her feel desired. Situationships were her comfort zone, and she thrived in them. Then I met Joel. Ironically, we met through social media. Things moved naturally between us, and after a few days, I introduced him to my friends. There was one night that, looking back now, changed everything. We met for dinner, Joel, Lucy, another friend, and me. Dinner turned into drinks, and drinks turned into enough alcohol that instead of staying out, we decided to continue hanging out at Joel's place. We picked up more drinks and settled in. At one point, Lucy sat down and stretched her arms over her head. Pop. One of the buttons on her blouse flew off. Everyone laughed. Joel immediately offered her one of his shirts to borrow. She smiled, disappeared into another room, and came back wearing his shirt. It seemed harmless, or so I thought. We stayed another hour before calling it a night. The next morning, I called Lucy. We laughed about everything that had happened and agreed we needed another night like that soon. For me, it was just a fun memory. For them, it had apparently become something else. Over the next few weeks, we all hung out several more times. Then one weekend, I had to leave town. Before leaving, I asked Joel what his plans were for Saturday. I'm just grabbing drinks with some guy friends, he casually replied. I believed him. We stayed in contact the entire weekend. Then I returned Sunday and we went out to dinner. Something was different. Joel barely spoke. He seemed distant, cold. Whatever warmth had existed between us was suddenly gone. I couldn't explain it. A few days later, things became even stranger. Out of nowhere, Joel started asking detailed questions about my previous relationship. Not casual questions, interrogation type questions. Then he asked something that caught me completely off guard. Did you know your ex's ex girlfriend? I did, but the story wasn't what he thought. She had gone to our high school. She was one grade ahead of me. More importantly, she was Lucy's best friend. She and I were never close. We only crossed paths because of Lucy. Truthfully, our personalities never clicked. She kept to herself and often came across as conceited. We simply existed in the same circle. During my senior year, she was dating a mutual friend. A year later or so, that mutual friend became my boyfriend, but not until long after they had broken up. Back then, he and I had simply become friends while working on school projects together. Our conversation started innocently through America Online Instant Messenger. If you're old enough to remember AOL, then you know the struggle. You couldn't use the internet while someone was expecting phone calls because it tied up the landline. So every night, I'd wait until everyone was asleep before logging on. School conversations slowly became personal conversations. He opened up about problems in his relationship. I listened. Eventually, AOL chats turned into nightly text messages. One night, we admitted we had feelings for each other. By then, his relationship had already ended. He told me he couldn't continue dealing with the constant jealousy and emotional exhaustion. Their relationship had simply run its course. He asked me out several times. I kept saying no, not because of his ex, simply because I felt it was too soon. Eventually, I said yes. We dated for 5 years, 5 good years before our relationship naturally came to an end. That was the entire story. Nothing hidden, nothing scandalous, really, nothing dishonest. So when Joel questioned me, I answered everything truthfully. He didn't say much afterward. Life seemed to return to normal, or so I believed. Months later, around the holidays, everything unraveled. It was a Friday night around 10:30 p.m. Joel called asking me to come over. I really didn't want to go. I was already getting ready for bed. He insisted. He even offered to drive to my place. But his speech sounded slurred. I knew he'd been drinking, so instead I drove over. When I arrived, his front door was unlocked. He was already passed out in bed. I woke up long enough for him to realize I was there. We laid together for a while before I decided to leave. Before I left, he asked one simple favor. Can you set my alarm for 7 a.m.? I picked up his phone. As I reached for the alarm, a text message appeared. Lucy. The moment I saw her name flash across the screen, my entire body went cold. My heart dropped into my stomach. Every instinct inside of me screamed that something wasn't right. For a split second, I debated whether I should open it. Then I made the decision. I opened the message. I immediately called one of my closest friends at the time and locked myself inside Joel's bathroom. When she answered, I didn't explain. I simply said, stay on the phone. I need you to hear this. I started scrolling as fast as my eyes could read, as fast as my fingers could move. Babe, mi amor, I miss you. I love you. Sweet dreams. Every message hit harder than the one before. Then I reached the message, the shirt. Lucy wrote that she loved sleeping in the shirt Joel had let her borrow that night at his place. The same shirt, the same night, the same moment I had laughed off without a second thought. Suddenly, every strange interaction, every awkward dinner, every question Joel had asked, every time Lucy wanted to know how our relationship was going, made perfect sense. They hadn't been flirting, they had been having a relationship behind my back. As I stood there shaking in that tiny bathroom, I could hear Joel pounding weakly on the door, demanding his phone back. I hung up with my friend, took one deep breath, opened the door, handed him his phone. He looked at me in the eyes and said, "Now you know." I refused to argue with someone who was drunk. I quietly told him we would talk about it the next day. The drive home felt endless. I couldn't cry. I wasn't angry. I was numb. I called to Lucy. No answer. I left a voicemail asking her to call me. She never did. The next day, Joel admitted everything. The weekend I had been out of town, he hadn't been with his guy friends. He had been with Lucy. And during that weekend, Lucy introduced him to her best friend, my ex boyfriend's ex girlfriend. She told Joel a completely different version of how my previous relationship had started. According to Joel, he finally knew the truth. In his mind, getting involved with Lucy was payback. No matter how much I explained, he had already made up his mind. He believed I had betrayed someone years earlier. So he chose to betray me now. Not because it was true, because he believed it. The hardest betrayal, however, wasn't Joel. It was Lucy, the woman who had I known since childhood, the woman who had shared my struggles, the woman who knew exactly who I was. For days, I kept calling. Nothing. Then one evening, while talking with another mutual friend, she told me Lucy had disappeared on her too after borrowing money she never repaid. Together, we decided to drive to Lucy's house. Her car wasn't there. So instead, we found her car parked in Joel's driveway. His car sat right beside it. There was no denying it anymore. We called. Voicemail after voicemail. Nothing. I called Joel. He finally texted, "Leave or I'll call the police." I replied, "Go ahead. We'll wait." We waited nearly an hour. No police ever came. Neither did they. Before leaving, my friend walked over to Lucy's car. She happened to be the co-signer to Lucy's car. The doors were unlocked. Inside, the car looked almost brand new, except every personal belonging had disappeared. We had emptied everything, sprinkled all her personal belongings far, far away, miles away, cities away from Lucy. The next morning, things became even uglier. I woke up to a voicemail from Lucy's mother. Instead of apologizing, she threatened me. Then she crossed the line no mother ever should. She claimed Joel chose Lucy because, unlike me, her daughter knew how to satisfy him, if you know what I mean. She said it in a much vulgar way, but we'll keep it as is. She also blamed us, my friend and I, for Lucy losing her job after misplacing the master keys for her work. That voicemail was enough. That same day, I filed for a restraining order against both Lucy and her mother. An officer contacted her mother directly. Although she denied everything, I never heard from her again. Months passed. Life slowly began moving forward. One evening, while driving to meet a friend for dinner, I received the call I had been dreaming about. I had been accepted into graduate school, the graduate school I wanted. I was overwhelmed with joy. Nothing could have ruined that moment. Then, as I waited at a red light, I glanced to my left. There sat Joel. Lucy was in the passenger seat. For the first time, it didn't hurt because while they were driving together into the life they had chosen, I was driving toward mine, graduate school, a new career, new opportunities, a future they would not be part of. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't getting even. It's realizing that life had something far better waiting for you than the people who betrayed you. One thing I've learned is that heartbreak from a relationship is painful, but betrayal from a close friend cuts differently. When someone you love betrays you, it's devastating. But when someone you've known for years, somehow someone who shared your childhood, your struggles, your victories, and your trust is the one who betrays you, the pain is almost impossible to describe. Lucy wasn't just another acquaintance. We had grown up together. We had watched each other's mothers overcome unimaginable hardships as single parents. We had celebrated milestones together, laughed together, and navigated different chapters of our lives side by side. She knew my heart. She knew my character. She knew how much trust I placed in people I loved. Never, not for 1 second, did I think she would be the person to betray me. That's the thing about betrayal. It rarely comes from strangers. It comes from the people you've opened your life to, the people you've welcomed into your home, introduced to your partner, and trusted without hesitation. You never imagined that someone you've known for so many years could look you in the eye, laugh with you, ask about your relationship, and all the while be building one of their own behind your back. Looking back now, I wasn't just mourning the end of my relationship with Joel. I was grieving the loss of a friendship that had existed for most of my life. That deception didn't just break my heart, it shattered my ability to understand how someone I trusted so deeply could choose to hurt me in such a deliberate way. That kind of betrayal leaves scars, not because you lose the people involved, but because it changes the way you view trust. It teaches you that sometimes the people you never think would betray you are the very ones who do. And that's what makes it so disappointing, so heartbreaking, and so incredibly difficult to accept.